Hi, I'm William Stewart, co-founder of Teleios. Welcome back to our verse-by-verse study on the book of Acts. We start chapter 26 today. Paul is making the rounds of the Roman aristocracy, rulers, and in doing so, I believe, is making a case for Christianity. And I think his efforts here would seem to be God's main goal for his life at this time, up until he comes to Rome, where he appeals to Caesar and appeared before Caesar. We don't have this documented in Acts, was to present a case to the Roman leadership that Christianity was benign, it was not going to cause rebellion. They were loyal subjects of the Roman Empire. Even though they didn't sacrifice to the emperor, they were okay. And it did work. And in early Christian period, it did spread throughout the Roman Empire. I think God used the Pax Romana, the postal system, the road system in Rome. These are very unique features of this empire, as terrible as it can be, but God used what was useful for the spreading of his word and gospel. Let's start verse 1. And he appears before Agrippa and Festus, the proconsul or procurator of Judea, wanted Agrippa's opinion. Agrippa was king in the area north of the Sea of Galilee. He's Agrippa number 2 and a descendant of Herod the Great. So Paul stands before Agrippa, basically saying he was an expert in Jewish affairs, basically a Pharisee. And so he was able to judge, or he was complaining that he was being judged because of the promises made to the fathers, particularly Abraham, and for Messiah. And so is it not reasonable, he said to Agrippa, that there could be, that God, if there's a God, basically, could raise someone from the dead? So then he backtracks, where he said he had the hope in the promises and talked about resurrection and talked about how he persecuted the early Christians, and in a terrible way. He shut them up in prison. He sought them out to put them to death and sought them even beyond the borders of Judea. I think all this must have been illegal, but he had guards with him from the high priest, I do believe, I'm guessing here, and was able to do it. So he then recounts his conversion. And we've seen this before from Acts 9. He's recounted it before. He does it in a little bit more detail here, quoting Christ, Saul, Saul, again, why are you persecuting me? On his way to Damascus, excuse me, and a light shone brightly around him. And he repeats the phrase of Christ, it's hard to kick against the pricks. This is verse 14. This again recounts a saying from back then that people used to goad cattle along with a sharp stick. So if the cattle then kicked, they would hurt themselves even more, aggravate themselves even more by kicking against a sharp stick. So it's hard to resist God, who can hurt you if you resist more. I think that's what it's saying. So Christ told them, you rise, stand on your feet, and I'm going to make you a witness, the minister and witness, both of these things, otherwise Christ, which thou hast seen, and the things which I will appear unto thee. So Christ is going to tell him even more. And we hear about this in 2 Corinthians 12, where Christ is caught up to heaven to be taught, Paul's caught up to heaven to be taught by Christ personally, and that Paul is filling up the knowledge of what Christ did not have time or the apostles had the ability to hear while he was on earth. Colossians 1:24 and the first half of Ephesians 3. I will deliver you from the people, I think the Jews here, and the Gentiles, who the Jews would use to try to charge him in various cities, unto whom I now send thee. Otherwise, again, he's the apostle to the Gentiles. But he also taught the diaspora of the Jews, giving them that opportunity that the Jews had in Judah to believe Christ, both by Christ himself and by Peter, as we see in chapters 2 and 3 in Acts. So to open their eyes, this is the Gentiles, turn them from darkness to light in the power of Satan. Otherwise, before Christ, Satan basically owned people. He owns unbelievers. Ephesians 2:2. And Christ put to death the power of Satan. Hebrews 2:14. Through the cross. Because people could come to Christ and be under his power, have the Spirit in them, and be regenerated, that they might receive the forgiveness of their sins, the inheritance among them which are sanctified by faith that is in me. The inheritance being eternal life, and the sanctification, the justification before God, that we are seen as righteous, amazingly, Romans 6, by the blood of Christ and Christ's broken body. So he presents the gospel to Agrippa. So again, there's yet another elevated Roman leader hearing the gospel, and we'll see Agrippa's response next time. But what Paul's done here, he's defended himself before Agrippa, basically saying he's a Jewish expert, yet Christ appeared to him and told him of the way, the true way, as Acts presents it, this term, of Jesus Christ, where people believe upon his death and resurrection by faith alone, to the forgiveness of their sins and justification by Jesus Christ, to eternal life. Okay, thanks for joining me today. Again, we'll see Agrippa's response next time, and what else is in store for Paul in this amazing journey. Thanks for joining me today. Goodbye for now.